for those of you who aren't familiar with it, for remote payroll, we're going to quickly go over the basic features, but we're going to be soon advancing into additional more advanced features as we move forward. So Kevin Wroblewski will be doing this demonstration today. My name is Dennis Doherty. I'm the Associate VP of Marketing. Kevin is the VP of Product Design and Development. To give you a quick overview of how hh2 works, we install a sync tool on your server. It syncs over all the data to our data center, making it available to your field workers and employees that are out in the field and your technicians out in the field. And so they can access their data, whether it be on a computer, a tablet, or any other type of mobile device. You can access it from there. And so with that said, this is what we are going to be covering today. This is pretty much our itinerary. If you have any questions, please go ahead and post them in the question section. We will go ahead and respond to those questions as we move forward. And if we can't get to your question, we will be having a Q&A session at the end of the training. And once we hit that, we'll answer any questions that were asked during the session. And we'll also be looking for additional questions at the end too. And so if you do have questions, just go ahead and post them across. And from here, I'll turn the time over to Kevin. Kevin, are you there?
I'm here. I'm ready.
Okay, great. I'm going to go ahead and make you the presenter.
Okay, sounds good. And for those of you who are joining us, who are more the field employees versus the admins, as you might have seen on the itinerary there, what we're going to be doing, we're going to be covering everything today, but we're going to be starting out with the time entry. So, for those of you who are only interested in time entry, you guys basically just the first 30, 40 minutes will apply to you. And then after that, you know, if you guys want to head out, that's fine. And then after that, we'll cover all the setup for the administrators. So we're going to start out here. We'll just get right into the time approval screen. And one of the things that I'm going to ask everyone to pay attention to as we go through this is pay attention to the speed that you see things load with. Now, this is a live hh2 site that we are doing this presentation with today. This isn't any sort of special web server or anything that we're using. So what's running this site here on my computer today is the exact same one that all of your live sites are running on too. And the first thing I'm going to show you that we've done on the new time approval page is the height is now variable. It's snapped to the height of your window. So for those who have larger windows, you can see as I change the size of my browser window, the size of the list changes as well. And so that's people who have larger monitors, who can view more. You'll be able to basically view as much as your browser will allow you to. So the other thing you might notice that's new here is we're starting to show the employee photos that we've recently introduced into the system. And some people may wonder what the use is of employee photos and user photos. There's a couple reasons why we think this is a good feature to have in the product. The first one is, cognitively speaking, human beings are hardwired in their brains to recognize faces. We can recognize a face instantly versus having to read an employee name or read an employee number to identify who that person is we're looking at. The other reason is just to introduce a little bit of friendliness and familiarity to the user experience as well. One thing that multiple usability studies have demonstrated is that when a website looks aesthetically pleasing, users actually consider it to be easier to use. Whether or not it actually is easier to use, if it looks nice, they will actually feel like it's easy to use. So that's kind of another reason of why we like to have them and to start encouraging them being used. But probably the biggest reason is that you may think, how many of you have within your companies, you have multiple employees with the same name, or perhaps even just two brothers with the same last name but a different first name. Well, having an employee photo that appears next to that name is a real quick way of differentiating between those. So it's especially useful when you have multiple field employees who have the exact same name. That way, right now you have to go based off the employee number to differentiate them. Now you have a real easy tool at your disposal to figure out which guy you're actually dealing with. The other thing that's here now is these photos are clickable. Now, it's different from clicking the name. Clicking the name will open up the timesheet as you're accustomed to. But if you just click the photo, well, actually, you'll be able to see the employee. And that's going to include, their residence, their content, their hire date. If you're looking historically or at an employee you just terminated, the termination date will show there as well. Also, if there's a default certified class or default union class on that employee record, actually any of the default information, default equipment, any default information you have on that employee record in Timberline will also show here as well. And also, you can click on the photo here. If you don't have a photo, you can click here to set the employee photo as well. So the next thing you may notice here, those of you who weren't at our last webinar a few weeks ago, we have gotten rid of the tabular view of the pay type totals on the time approval screen. And for some companies heavily use pay types. We have several companies who literally have over 100 pay types that they use on a regular basis. And so in those scenarios, right now, the time approval page that you're familiar with was limited to 8. After there were more than 8 pay types, it just wouldn't break it out by pay type anymore because there would physically not be the room on the screen to display a tabular view. So what we did was we completely got rid of the tabular view altogether. And now what we'll do is we're just going to display the pay types just kind of in a line wrapped list view. And this will show as many pay types as they have coded to for. So for every employee now, you will be able to see every pay type they have. If I go back a couple of weeks here, you'll be able to see what I mean. So here we have an example of where we have this employee has 4 pay types being coded to. So you'll see how that's going to be displayed now. We're also displaying the abbreviation. So these are the printed descriptions that come from your Timberline. We'll show the printed descriptions as well so that you can easily identify it. And then in addition to that, we do have the kind of the grand color key down here as well. If you actually want to see the written out description, you can look down there. But they are also, you may have seen, there is a mouse over. So if I hold my mouse over any of them, it will show me what the full description is of that pay type. So the other thing that you'll see here is we kind of have a new pay period selector. One thing this does have is we're going to start showing you pay periods that are locked. So you'll be able to easily recognize pay periods that are locked. And then we also have a little filter here where you can either be viewing past pay periods, or if you want to deal with future pay periods, such as when you're right before the holidays and people are coding to the following week, you can pull up future pay periods that way. So next I'll move into the view all time. So if you click the view all time, we have a slightly redesigned interface here. One thing we have done though is we have a search available. So if you ever want to search within that employee's time, such as on a job or a cost code, you can use the search to whittle down those results. But the other thing that we've done here is you'll see there's no longer the tabbed view along the top. we've combined the first two into one page here. So something new that we have here is for each employee, at the bottom, we'll have their daily totals. So here we're viewing an entire pay period. So for that pay period, we have what the pay type totals are for each day, and then we have the grand totals, which are just the same as what was printed on the page below, but we do have it there. So this is going to be a nice and easy way for those who want to get at those daily totals to figure out whether we're coding to overtime correctly. And then the third tab, which was the approval history, we'll still have that available. Here we have a little button here with the thumbs up. That icon is what represents approval from here on out. So you'll be able to click that and view the history of approval for that time. So the other two we have here, nothing new here with the daily comments. You can click that and see the list of your daily comments that they have entered for that pay period. But then one thing that we do have new here is we have the attendance. If your company does use attendance, this includes whether you track whether they're tardy, present, excused, unexcused, or if you use the shift times, what time they started their shift, what time they ended their shift, as well as whether or not they took their breaks, what time their lunch was, and things like that. We'll get into the setup of those things a little later, but if you do employ those in your system, you'll be able to access those right here from this button. So the other things that we've changed here is all the approve all buttons. We took those from the top and they're now up here. So here's your promote all, approve all, reclaim all, and as well as your lock to lock your pay period. We also have the employee search as usual. One thing that's nice about this is when the list shows, we already have all the employees we need. So when you search here, it's very fast. We don't actually need to go to the servers to get that information because it's already right there. So it's a very, very quick search for those employees. The other thing is these lists are no longer a scroll to load. Before, the way the list would load is it would just load a batch of records, and then as you scrolled, more would load, and then as you scrolled, more would load. That's not the case anymore. This now will retrieve and render all employees all at once, and it's incredibly fast. We've actually tested this on our largest customers where we have in excess of 400 employees, and it goes as fast, basically as fast as you're seeing it here. That it is just as fast. So then we have the filters here as well. These are nothing new. These are the same filters we had on the previous one, but you can change your pay period, your dates if you want, your time statuses that you're looking at. If you want to filter just on time that's coded to a specific job, you can do that here. If you want to limit employees to your pay groups, you can do that. And then the other things that are changing in this new interface is up here. So we have the Excel button. This button now is only going to be used to generate labor detail reports. It will no longer be used for exporting. Exporting will have to be done from the exported page. And we do have a recording of our last webinar where we went into detail on the new export format. So those of you who are curious, you can just look at our support forums, or you can just contact us at support. We can give you the video for that. The other thing that has changed is we are going to only be using the PDF timesheets from now on. So that is something that's changing. Previously on the time approval page, the print icon generated printed timesheets, but it was in an Excel file. That is going away, and we will now only be using the PDF timesheets. There's actually nothing different between these two. They're the same ones you can access from the menu if you go to labor detail and PDF timesheets. The only difference is these are just, these give you quick access to them. Also, we do have a new labor detail report, a new way of generating a labor detail report. It is much, much faster. They only take literally seconds. So for both the Excel and the PDF timesheets, you can get them much, much faster than in the past. Emailing the digest emails to your approvers, that basically is unchanged. That's the same functionality. We do have quick access to some of the settings, some of the things like whether you want to view the weekly timesheet or daily timesheet, whether by default you want to view the current pay period, the previous pay period, and some of the PDF timesheet options here. We'll get to these others here a little later. And then we have a refresh, that if at any point in time you think these numbers have changed and you want to refresh, you can just hit that. And then in addition, you can filter on the individual payroll groups by clicking on these totals at the right. Okay, so I want to quickly jump now into the timesheet. We're running a few minutes behind, so I want to pick up the pace a little bit. So I'm going to head over to the timesheet. And so as we saw before, this window is snapped to your browser. So you can see as I change the height of the browser, how many codes I can see just automatically changes as well. So again, those who have bigger monitors, you will now be able to see as many code rows as your monitor will allow you to fit. But then if there are more, it does still search, or I'm sorry, it does still scroll. So the next thing is the employee info that we saw on the time approval screen. That again is available here. So we have the employee photo available here now. If you click on that, you'll pull open the same employee info screen that we saw before, where you can have access to their information and any of their default codings. One of the other things then that's changed here is we've kind of reorganized things here to make this screen be as simple as possible. Only the things that are used most often are permanently there on the screen. Anything that's used less often, we've kind of moved those off to the sides. So for example, rather than having the tabs at the top between weekly and daily, you can just click this icon and then it basically gives you the toggle to switch between weekly and daily. And we'll get to the daily timesheet here in just a second. Next, we have your pick list, your payroll group pick list here. And you can search right from this box here too. So you don't have to open the pick list. You can, if you want to search for something, you can search right from here. But also these pick lists are much, much faster. Again, it's something to pay attention to how quickly these pick lists load. And then we have the employee pick list. Again, you can search for the employee directly from the box if you want to, or you can open up the pick list. You can see we kind of have moved to this Rolodex style pick list here. What this allows us to do is it allows us to present a little bit more information, and while also not just doing a straight list, we can actually fit more items on the screen because we have 3 per row. And then what you can see, what we have here is currently we are showing the default certified class that's on the employee. So that way we're seeing who's a carpenter, who's a mason, who's a laborer. These are all their default certified class on the employee records. And then we also just show some contact information. If they have a cell number, we show the cell number. If not, if they have an address, we'll show the address. One of the things that has changed is, you may have noticed, we no longer have that little people icon, as people would call it, that you'd have to click to add and remove employees from the groups. We basically eliminated the need to have to do that step. Now, by default, when you open up this pick list, it's going to show you just the employees that are in that group. But if you change that to something else, let's say I just want to view all employees in the company. If I select an employee who is not currently a member of my payroll group, it's just going to automatically add them to the payroll group for you. So we basically just eliminated that step. And then in addition to that, we do have a button available here, which is similar if you're familiar with the daily timesheet, where we have the button where you can just pull that up, and then you can just see a list of all the employees who are in the group, versus the ones who are not in the group. And then you can just hit these add and remove buttons to move them. If you want to remove people from the group, you can then just come here and you can just, go click, 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 remove anyone you want to add. Or if you want to batch add people, you can just come through here and go click, click, click. Again, we have a very fast search here, so that's something to pay attention to as well. Your users really should be able to fly through these workflows on these new interfaces. So the pay period pick list is like the one we saw earlier on the time approval screen, where we're basically just, again, showing the list. This is basically the same the way it is now, but if you want to code to a future pay period, you can just select a future pay period and then select whatever the pay period is that you want to view. Now, you may notice we don't have the custom start and end dates here, because what we're going to be doing is we actually now will have an explicit system setting that says how long is your pay period. So we do have some companies who want to view 2 weeks at a time. They do bi-weekly pay periods. We'll actually have a system setting that says I have 14-day pay periods, and so by default it will just show you 14 columns, 14 days on the timesheet all at once. And then, obviously you'll have to scroll horizontally in accordance with how big your web browser is. Okay, so the other thing that we've moved is these buttons the buttons that used to be in the top right, we've moved them into this More menu. So so you can click that to get access to your Refresh, your Quick Look, your Excel, your PDF, and your settings. If I open up the View All Time, this is the same as what we've already seen, but that is available there. And we are going to offer because there may not be a one-size-fits-all here, we will have offer just a user setting where if a user uses the Quick Look more often, they'll be able to say which of these icons they want to be the one that is permanently displayed here at the top right. So that will be configurable so that each user can specify for themselves, what's most important to them. I'll open up the user settings again to show you we basically have access to the same user settings here as on the time approval page. Some of the new ones, though, that we have here is for all the coding types that we have for the system, we actually have a difference of visible and hidden. And what this will do is, if my payroll group has access to code to, let's say, certified classes, but I as a user in that group rarely ever need to add a certified class to my time card, I can actually hide that, and that will hide it when I go to add that code to the time approval to the timesheet. And there are some ways to prevent that. If anyone's concerned about that, don't be, because I'll get into a moment a little later here. We have ways to disable those as well. Okay, so the other thing you may notice is we now have previous and next buttons at the top here. So in our columns, we can easily move between the current pay period, the previous pay period, the next pay period. So that's another thing. If people want to code to a future pay period, they can actually just hit over to the right, and that may be a quicker way of moving to the following week. And then all of our approval buttons, you can see we have our approve button. So this is to approve the whole timesheet. That's there. But then all of the less used functions are moved into this More. So to clear the timesheet, to autofill the timesheet with the previous pay period, to move the entries to a different pay period, you can see it automatically, it has an idle. So if it detects your idle, it just automatically closes. But our copy, promote, deny, reclaim, those are all right there. If I open up the move, you can see we have some new options available here. So when you move, you can actually say whether or not you want to move the daily comments as well, the attendance if you use it, and any unit-specific information you have, like unit descriptions or custom fields. Those are also available on the copy now. So if you do a copy, you can say whether or not you want to copy the daily comments to the other employees, the attendance unit details, And then for the other employees, you can either check the box that you want to copy this time to all employees, or you can go through the list of employees that are in this payroll group and just check the ones you want and copy the time to them. So for the timesheet grid itself, you can see we've done some better visualizations here. The job groupings, particular, are much more prevalent now. They're a little bit thicker. They're much more darker and bolder. So that should make the jobs much more easier to read when you're looking at those. The other thing that we've done is we've kind of cleaned up the top of the timesheet where we used to have the search box. That is now there, but we kind of took a tip from Apple, and the way it appears in iOS is when you're in a list, you just scroll up and there's your search bar. So by default, the timesheet will always load like this, but if you ever want access to the search, you can just scroll up and then there's your search. And then let's say I want to search just on a particular cost code. I can type that in and it'll just pull up, you know, whatever it is that matches it. I can search for a job, a cost code, you know, any of the coding, anything that basically appears as text here or appears as text here. I can search for those, and it will show me what matches on that. And then in addition to that, we do have the status is available. If you just want to show ready time, unapproved time, those are all they're available as well in that top right corner. So next what I'll do, I'll show you, you may see here that we've introduced mouse overs for all of the boxes. This was something that was a little problematic previously. We were able to bring this back without any negative impact to performance. And so for every single box, you can mouse over and you can see, let's say I had a lot of codes for a job such that I'm scrolling down, I can no longer see the job grouping that I was under. Well, the mouse over will still show you what the job was there. It's the first thing listed there. It then also shows me all the coding for that row, and then the last thing is what pay type is it that I'm currently moused over. Okay, so now we'll move on to actually adding codes to the timesheet. So that button's in the same place here. One thing you'll notice here is we have this little section off the right here. We're going to basically show you a preview of what you're adding. So if I go into the job selector, again, pay attention to how quickly our job selectors are loading. Let's say I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to select this job. Well, now we see here in this preview that that job's being added. Then if I come over here to cost code, we still have the ability to select multiple codes. So let's say I want to add these two cost codes, and I can deselect all if I want to start over again, or if I'm done, I just hit back. And then you can see now this preview is showing we now have two codes. So for each of those jobs, this is what we're going to be adding. So that cost code on that job and that cost code on that job. Then let's say I wanted to add a certified class as well. Let's actually say I wanted to add two certified classes. So if I go back now, you'll see now we actually have four things because we have the product of everything I have selected there. So now for each of the cost codes, we're going to be adding each of the certified classes that I also specified. And if for any reason I don't want to include something, I can just hit the trash can icon and it won't include that anymore on what to add. And then the other thing that's new is, let's say I also want default coding on that job. I can just go ahead and hit that button. And you'll see that in the list here, we've just added for that job, default coding will be on. So then we've not actually added anything to the timesheet yet. We can do two ways to do that. If I have more things, if I want to add everything here, but then start with a different job or something, I just hit new batch. That will add everything in the list and start me over fresh. Or if I'm done, I can just hit add to timesheet and it will go ahead. I will be done. Everything has been added to the timesheet now. So one other thing that I'm going to be coming back to is, you may notice we have a little required here that says cost code is required when a job is selected. That's a new feature, and I'll get to that when we get into the setup a little later. But just to basically briefly hint, we have new group options that for every payroll group, you can say a job, not only can you code to a job, but it's required. You have to specify a job. Or if you specify a job, you have to specify a cost code. So all the code types will be able to be have much more power in their configuration to kind of edge your users into making sure they're coding things appropriately. So just to quickly, again, just to kind of wrap up, I gotta kind of pick up the pace here a little bit. So then if we go ahead and, you know, we enter in time into the timesheet, that's nothing too much new there, but you may have seen we did kind of flash that the grand total has now updated. Now, for those companies who do unit-specific things like unit-specific descriptions or custom fields, we've moved that instead of being above the timesheet, it's now just there in kind of this floating box beside the unit. So whenever you focus in on a unit, it will show you whether or not you have entered a description. Here we've not entered a description, so I can just click the button. This is now going to be the new interface for entering unit-specific details. So this is where description will be. Any custom fields that you code to, that'll be here. And we actually have even more that's going to be coming down the future for functionality that you can do within this page here. But let's just go ahead and we'll just put in a test description here. And we'll go ahead and save that. And you can see we've now highlighted that unit has a description. So again, nothing too different from what you're accustomed to. And then again, if I go back in there and I focus on that, you can see what the description was that I entered there. So next, I'll just quickly show attendance. Again, not really anything new here. This is the same as those of you who currently use attendance and shift and break times. This is all the same thing. The only thing that is new is we've now, all this is configurable, so that's available in the system settings page that we'll get to a little later in the webinar. But here, you know, for example, as we have this set up, you can see what time they can specify, what time their shift started, what time their shift ended, whether or not they took their morning break, what time they took their lunch. And all of these are configurable, whether you want these to just be a checkbox to indicate that you took them, whether or not you just want the start time, or whether or not you want the start, when they started their lunch, when they ended their lunch, when they started their break, when they ended their break. All of those will be there and be available. If you use the tardy, excused, unexcused, those will be here. Well, we don't have them turned on our demo site here, but that drop down will be available here as well. So again, not too much new there as far as attendance. Same thing with daily comments. Basically nothing new here. Everything is what you're accustomed to, other than we do have kind of these FYI fields at the top to just remind you what day it was that you were clicking on. Same thing with attendance. We have the FYIs at the top to remind you, you know, what day it was that you clicked on there. So that's basically it for the timesheet. I'm going to be moving on next now to labor details. So for those of you who that interests you, or the setup, you guys can hang around. But those of you who are basically only interested in seeing the time entry changes and the time improvement pages, we're basically done with that. So we are recording this session. We will be putting the video recording up for everyone to view whenever they want later. But yeah, basically we're done with the entry portion at this point for those of us who that's the only application that they were joining us for today. So as I indicated, we'll quickly move on to the new labor detail report. So again, pay attention to, you know, how quickly the labor detail loaded up for me. So what we have here is we have a little bit more compact view here. And it really is the exact same thing as what's in the view all time. If you scroll down, you'll see I have all my codes broken out for the individual time units. But if I scroll down, this is new. We've never had this before in the labor detail, but now we will actually have the daily totals for that employee for the date range that you're looking at, as well as the grand totals for the entire the entire date range that you're looking at for that employee. Additionally, just as with some of the interfaces, once this renders, I have all the data I need. So if I do a search, let's say I want to just look at Donald Black here, I can just type that into the search and hit enter and see how it just instantly shows, because I already had everything I needed. I don't need to do the round trip up to the web server to get that information. Then additionally, we have the access to the attendance and the access to the daily comments. And you can see they'll be highlighted if there's actually any information for you to see there versus an employee who doesn't have anything entered in there. So the other things you can see at the top here is we have our filters, our date range. We can access the filters in two ways. We can either just click the date range directly, or we can just click the filter button. And so here we have all the filters that you're accustomed to on the daily or on the labor detail. So you have your date range. If you want to select payroll groups, if you want to do specific employees, you can access those. Jobs, if you want to just filter on a specific job or any of the code types, all those are available here. You can just select what you want. You can do multiple, and then you can just apply your filters to just get that data. So the one thing that will be changing here is just to keep performance good and to keep performance as fast as it is. We will be limiting, for what I'm viewing here on the web page, this will be limited to just 1 month. We won't be doing year-to-dates or job-to-dates. If you want to do year-to-dates or job-to-dates, that's fine, but you're going to have to generate an Excel file or a PDF file. However, they generate much faster. They should generate, measured within seconds of how fast that will be. Just for example, I'll go ahead and generate the Excel file, and you can see there it was. It's done already. So that already downloaded to my machine here. You see, I wasn't pretending. It actually generated that labor detail that quickly. Now, granted, we don't have a lot of data, so your results are going to vary based on that. But it's still, even for rendering, an entire company for a pay period, you're going to be able to measure that in seconds. It's going to be, in most cases, it's going to be less than a minute to generate a labor detail for an entire pay period for an entire company. So next, what we'll do is that's it for labor detail. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to move into the system settings page. So this is something that's going to be changing. We're going to be combining what you've had all along. Is you've kind of had two settings pages. One that was traditionally for kind of the system as a whole, and then you had a separate one that was just for the mobile apps. Those have now been combined and unified, so that there's one set of settings that works across all platforms. So when I come in here, the first thing you're going to see is just what accounting system you use. This is not alterable. It's just kind of an FYI. The other thing is what pay period that you end on. This is now new. Now, some of you may have noticed in the past several weeks that that closed jobs were being shown. We have broken out whether a job is active or inactive versus when it's closed. Now, this option here, for those of you who basically want things the way it was, that closed jobs do not show up when you go to add jobs to a time card, or you want a closed job to automatically come off of a time card, or you don't. If you do service work to close jobs and you do want to code time to close jobs, that basically is now governed by this option here. If this option is on, you will still be able to code to close jobs. If it's off, you won't. Those will be hidden. So for those of you who did have the problem with closed jobs showing up, in the very next update, actually it's the update that went out this week. Not all sites are on it, but I would probably say probably this weekend or sometime next week, all sites will be updating to the latest release where closed jobs will stop being available in accordance with this option. The other option we have here is whether or not the quick view is even available. Some companies really don't want the quick view available at all, so that that will be on or off. And then whether or not you want to allow negative time, that is also an option that will be here. The automatic administration, so this is for companies who automatically set up their job managers. That's usually what it is, when they fill out the project manager field or one of the miscellaneous fields with their superintendent, and then when that syncs up to hh2, it automatically assigns them that job in the approval path to have access. That's what's under this section here. This first one here is whether or not this automatically assigns a job to a payroll group if a group manager of that payroll group is in one of those fields on the job record. So let's say you create a payroll group for every one of your superintendents, and you have that superintendent's name filled out in one of the miscellaneous fields. Well, if you were to basically fill this out, you could say something like miscellaneous 1 is going to contain the first and last name of a group manager. Well, then what that's going to do is when that job syncs up, it's going to look at all the payroll groups, and it's going to say if the name here in this miscellaneous 1 field is the name of a group manager of a payroll group, go ahead and assign that job to that group. That's as opposed to allowing the payroll group to have access to all jobs. So for those of you who have your system set up that way, if you're not already, that might be a way of automating your administration. For those of you who do job-specific approval paths, the rest of these apply to you. And again, many of you already use these functions. But let's say, for example, in our approval path, we have a project manager level, and on the project manager field of the job, we have the first and last name of who the person is of that project manager. Well, so if you have your settings set up like this, it's going to look for an hh2 user who has the same first and last name as what's in the project manager field on the job record in Timberline, and if so, it's automatically going to assign them as project manager of that job in hh2 as well. And then you can do that for up to 3 manager types. So for example, if you had a superintendent in the approval path, you can do the same thing there. Then we have the unit detail settings. So these are your labels. For those of you who use custom fields, here you can specify whatever the label is for your custom fields, whether you specify, for example, some companies work on oil derricks, and so for all the time, whenever they enter time, they specify the number of the oil derrick that they were working on. So, you know, a label here might be oil derrick, and then those are exportable. You can include all 5 of those unit-specific fields in the export file, and you can import those to a miscellaneous field in the time record or the description field in the time record. And so again, for those of you who think that might be useful, let us know at support, and we can get those set up for you. Then we have the options for the PDF timesheets here. Nothing really new here. This is basically what the same settings that have always existed, what you group by, sort by, you know, how you do signatures, what additional information you use. If you have any footer text that says something, you know, like I agree that I've not been injured or something like that, you can put that there. For those who use attendance systems I was referring to earlier, where here you can go in and you can say we want to track the shift time, when an employee's shift started, when it ended, if it's multi-day, if you have guys working overnight, they start on one day, but their shift ends on the following day, you can turn that on so they can track that you know, my shift started on July 15th, but my shift ended on July 16th. You can turn that on. Then you have the setup for all your breaks. This is where I said you can track up to 5 breaks a day. And so here you can specify whether it's taken, not taken. That means it'll just be a checkbox if they check. If it's start time only, then that means it'll give them, they have to type in a time. Or if it's start and end time, they can specify a start time and an end time. And then you can label each break. So for example, you can say a morning break, a lunch, and an afternoon break. So basically, this is what drives what we saw earlier on the attendance. Then we have the user preferences. This is what we already saw earlier. But one thing to notice is here we have locks. So for earlier, I said some people may not want to you know, let users change these. You can come in here and lock these. And then we have apps, preferences that are specific only to the mobile system. You know, whether or not we log activity, you know, log synchronization activity on the apps. So, you know, things like that only apply to the apps. Those will be available here. So that's the settings page. Again, if you have additional questions on those, you can put them in the QA. So now we're going to move on to the payroll users. We're going to start kind of going down the line here of all the setup pages. So payroll users is new. This is a user setup. For those of you who use the user management on the home page, you can continue to use that, but the functionality is now also duplicated here directly in the payroll system. One of the things that is new, both on the user management on the home page and the one here, is we have this import button. If you click this button, it's going to automatically create user accounts for every single active employee in your company. So if you are new, if you, a fairly new company, or let's say you just went on a hiring spree and you hired a whole bunch of new people, you can click this button and it'll automatically create user accounts for all of those employees. We're also going to be introducing a system setting that will say what format do you want the username to be. Are your username formats first initial last name, first initial dot last name, first name dot last name? So we'll have options that you can say what it can be, so that when it auto creates them, that's the format it will use. Then you can also delete users. Now deleting is different from deactivating. Deleting would only be for this user account was basically created by mistake. It effectively shouldn't be there. If an employee simply doesn't work for the company anymore, you don't want to delete it because you'll lose historical data. Instead, you want to deactivate it. And by default, you can see we have a filter here. We're only showing active users, but we can change it to inactive users, which is another way of thinking of terminated employees. Those would be under inactive users. So I'll go into the details of a user, and you can see here, here's the is active that I was just referring to. So if you terminated an employee and you don't want him to have access to the system anymore, a lot of companies want terminated employees to have access for 90 days. For those who use our HR product and our pay stubs, they want their employees to be able to continue accessing their pay stubs for 90 days. So the employee does not automatically deactivate just because he's been terminated. But if you want to immediately terminate him and lock out his access to the system, you can just come in here and uncheck this box. So then you have all the other fields, obviously, you know, nothing new here. We did recently increase the minimum security on our system with all of the high profile hacks in the news lately. We really are starting to take a stronger stance on security, and your company should too. It's not something to be blasé about. Many of you may not even realize that if any of your employees have their identity information, like their email and phone and the information you're seeing on the screen right here, if any of your employees, that system is stolen because someone was able to log into hh2 with their password because their password was just something basically simple, your company can be fined by the federal government, and we're not talking about minor fines either. We're talking about fines that can put your company out of business. Security, it really is something to take seriously. And so that's why we've started being a little more strict on things like what the minimum password needs to be for people. So we do show that information here. And there is a setting to make it even stronger. This is a medium setting by default. You can make it even stronger. The other thing that's changed that you'll notice, we are now requiring an email address to create a user account. In this day and age, there's no reason not to have an email address. And the user needs to have that, so that if they forget their password and they want to reset it, if we don't have an email address on file, they're screwed. There's nothing, they have to call you up and you have to go, fix it for them. And I'm sure for many of the payroll managers out there that they would say they're busy enough without having to do things like resetting people's passwords for them because they forgot. So we are requiring an email address. The other thing we are not requiring, but we are going to nag you about, is a cell phone number. If you try to create a user account without specifying a cell phone number, you are going to be nagged about it. It will let you create the user account, but it's going to nag you about it first. And again, that's for very important reasons. As companies' paradigms are shifting to mobile, it's very important to have cell numbers. We have roadmaps here at hh2 to start using. We're not trying to collect information to spam people. We have future roadmaps where we really want to start using things like text messaging in the future for notifications and things like that. So this is a forward-looking thing. So again, we are strongly going to suggest that people keep a cell phone on record for user accounts. The other thing that you can see here is we have previous and next button. So if you want to quickly go through each of your users, you can hit the previous and next button, and it'll just alphabetically go through all your users. The other thing it will do is it will remember what tab you're on. Let's say I'm going to upload user photos for everyone. I can just be on that tab, and I can just quickly go through them. The other thing we have here is the user mapping. So what employee they are. If you use our field reports product, what their address book contact is. If you use field service, what their technician is. Those will be available there to set as well. Then we have permissions. Now these are new. We're no longer using the traditional site roles that you maybe have been accustomed to on the old user management. Well, there's now basically only two things that are necessary. Is the user an administrator? An administrator means they can access all the setup pages. It has nothing to do with accessing time. It just means they can configure things. And then there's a payroll manager, which has to do with, are they a payroll manager? Do they approve time? Do they see all employees in the system? This is not, can they set up? So those have been broken out into two different things. A lot of companies, they have completely different people, and their payroll manager is not necessarily the person they want setting things up, and vice versa. So those are now granular. You can define those for each individual thing. Then again, we have links here to go to the other systems. So if you have field reports, field service, you can click here. It's just a quick link to take you over to the user setup in those modules that you can do module-specific things for that user over there. The other thing you'll have here is all the manager types now. So for here, these are our group managers that we have listed here. So for all the group manager types we have set up, there's going to be a tab here. So here we can come in here and we can say, what are all the payroll groups that this person is a group manager of? This is a group manager type called foreman. We have an enterprise manager, report viewer. You can come into all these and say who they are. Same thing with job manager. So if you do job-specific approval paths, you can come in here and you can say what the jobs are that this person is a job manager of. Again, note that we've streamlined this. You don't have to, select the thing in the pick list and find it and then hit the add button. You can just go here and just go click, 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 and add them But then, of course, we have the search as well. If you want to, just search things, you can search. See here, we have a parent job as well as all of its extras. So here's the parent job, and then here's all the extras where you can see how these are displayed now with both the job number and the extra number there. And then same thing though, we have very few companies who do GL specific approval paths, but property management companies, this is common for them, where where users manage a specific GL account. So you can come in here and you can specify which GL accounts they're a manager of, which is usually what property they're a manager of. Again, you can just go click through here and do that. Okay, moving on, because again, we're falling a little behind here on the itinerary. So employees. So here we have kind of the same Rolodex view. We have a little bit better information here. We have their hire date here. That might be a little more useful in the setup. But again, we do have the filter where you can filter between active employees, inactive employees, and all employees. So I'll go ahead and click on an employee here. Again, just as with the users, I have previous and next. So if I want to quickly cycle through people, I can do that with those buttons. Just as with user, we are now requiring email address for employees. So obviously, if you're creating employees in Timberline, we don't have any way to enforce that. It may sync up without an employee, but we're not going to let you change anything in hh2 without specifying an email for that employee. The other good reason to specify an email for an employee, if you're going to use that button we indicated that automatically creates the user account, you're going to need an employee, and it's only going to create user accounts for employees that have an email address. And that's because in the past, when we auto-created user accounts, it always created the same default password. Again, that's terrible for security purposes. We're not going to do that anymore. From now on, when you auto-create a user, whether it's just a one-off or if you're doing it for all users, we're not going to set a password at all. We are going to email that person a link for them to set their password. So that's a way, again, to kind of take security a little bit at a higher level. And then you can, so you can update any information here, or you can change their active, inactive status. We also have the employee photo here. Now, employee photos and user photos are a little different. Employees are not necessarily users, and users are not necessarily employees. If a user does upload a user photo, though, for example, if they log in themselves and they come here and they upload, if they upload a photo, if they are linked to an employee account and that employee account has no photo, it will copy that photo over. But at that point, they really are two separate photos. Employee photos are typically going to be things that, your HR, when you hire a new employee, your HR person, probably takes a photo of that employee for records. So this is somewhere where you can upload those photos. Again, employee photos, great thing to have if you have lots of employees and they're all named John Smith. If you have 2, 3 guys all named John Smith, well, photos are a real good way of telling who's who. You can come to your mappings here. So this is the reverse direction. You can say what user account is linked to this employee. If there is none, this button here will be the button to auto-create the user account. Again, that will be in using the system setting that's going to be new. That'll say what format should the username be in. And then again, if you use our other products, field reports, field service, you'll be able to link those here as well. And then the other thing is you can go here and you can see all the payroll groups that employee is a member of, and you can add them or remove them from groups here if that's something that you want to do your administration that way. Okay, so next we'll move on to payroll groups. One of the new/old features we have here is the copy feature. So in the past, when you created a new payroll group, we asked you to specify an existing payroll group to copy their approval path. That's basically here now. If I hit this, it will toggle copy mode. If I have multiple if I had multiple payroll groups here, I would see all of them. I only have one here on this site. But if I clicked this, that will allow me to copy that payroll group, and we're going to let you specify whether you want to copy, in your copying, we'll have checkboxes. Do you want to copy the approval path? Do you want to copy the group managers? Do you want to copy the employees in this group? Do you want to copy the code access, the jobs and costs because they have access to? So all that setup and the settings, all that stuff you'll be able to specify what you want to include when you copy that. So when you create new payroll groups, using the copy is going to be a real easy and quick way of doing that. So I'll go ahead and open up this payroll group. So the first thing I'll show is we are going to be introducing the is active on the payroll group. This is going to be, I'm sure, heavily used. In the past, if you stopped using a payroll group, there was really no way of getting rid of it if you wanted to preserve your historical time. So now we have the is active, where you can actually just go in here and uncheck the box that you'll preserve your historical time, but you're indicating this payroll group is no longer in use. And so that will hide it from pick lists, so that you're not seeing it anymore. But it is still there if you want to access it historically. It'll be there available for you. So next we'll go to the settings. Here in the settings, again, we have some new, some old. So some of the old, whether or not you have attendance turned on, shift times, which is the start and time, whether or not users can add and remove employees to the payroll group. Some of you, on the daily timesheet, you have an additional filter to filter your employee columns to just the default certified class, or the default union class on the employee, or the miscellaneous one field on the employee record. So here's where you can come in and specify, if you use one of those extra filters on the daily timesheet, which one is relevant to this payroll group. Now here's something that's new and old. Here's where you can turn on your unit description and your custom fields, but we have a new function here. You can require your unit descriptions. What that will mean is you'll be able to key in all your time, but if you have time on your timesheet where you've not filled out unit descriptions, or you've not filled out a unit-specific field that you require, you won't be able to approve it. When you go to approve it, it'll give you a message that says you have time that has no unit descriptions, and so it'll force companies who heavily use that. That's probably going to be real good functionality for them to require that. But it means it's always required. It doesn't just mean, on this job or this cost code, if they have a GL account, then it means they have to specify for that too. So it is all or nothing in that every unit on the timesheet. In this payroll group, every unit on the timesheet, they have to specify it. Now here are some new and old ones. So this kind of also goes back to some of the earlier settings and I previously indicated. For each of the coding types, you'll be able to say whether or not this code type is enabled or disabled, and whether it's required. So for some payroll, for your field employee payroll groups, it may be that your guys in the field, they always have to specify a job. Well, you can make that required now, and they will always have to specify a job. So that's available to you. Now, if something is required, those user settings where we saw earlier, where a user can show or hide, make a visible or hidden code type, that we said, well, if a guy doesn't use that code type very often, they can hide it. If it's required, that will trump any user setting to hide that code. So again, those of you who might have gotten a bad feeling in your stomach when we were showing that users could hide a code type, don't worry, because if you require it, it will trump that. It will always show up, even if a user says they don't want to see it. Cost codes have that fourth option that I indicated earlier. So with cost codes, you can say it's disabled, it's enabled, it's required, or it's required with a job. The difference there is you're probably never going to say a cost code is always required, because that means you can't specify to a department without also specifying a cost code, which makes no sense. Or you can't code to a GL account without specifying a cost code, which makes no sense. Or you can't do unspecified on a job. But what you can do is people who don't want to do unspecified without a job, you can, that's the other thing to require the job. If you want to lack out the ability to do unspecified without any job, you can require that. Most people are just going to do required with job as far as cost codes are concerned. And then all the other code types, again, you can enable and disable. Now, one thing to keep in mind, though, is just because we've enabled something here doesn't mean your guys can code to it. This is just whether or not we use that thing at all. You still have to go into these tabs here and say what they have access to, whether it be all or specific things. But when we do disable things, we'll basically, you know, this UI here will only show things that you're currently using. The other thing that's new here is approval path is now here. It is in the payroll group setup. This always confused people because it was a separate page. They often, when they set up a new payroll group, they forgot to create the approval path. Now the approval path is right here within the payroll group setup so that people won't forget to do that. And the other thing that we're going to be, that's going to be part of this now is you basically can come in here, you can add all your approval paths, you know, just as you're accustomed to. There's basically nothing new here. You know, you add your levels, you specify what type of it is, what, you know, what manager type it is, you say what their permissions are, and you can add that level. But we've not actually saved anything. What you're going to do is you're going to want to make all your changes, and then you hit your save button. And and it's going to remind me, if I come in here and I add a fourth level, you know, it's going to, you have to click below before your changes take effect. It's going to show you that. And that's because people will often run into trouble because they change their approval paths in the middle of a pay period. And let's say they used to have 4 levels of approval and now they only have 3, but they already had time that's sitting at level 4, and they basically kind of, they've orphaned that time. They can't get at it anymore because it's sitting at a level that doesn't exist in the approval path. What we're going to be doing here is when you hit this save button, if you have time that hasn't been exported, it's going to push all time back down to level 1. So that's something to be aware of, that if you change the approval path in the middle of a payroll period, your users are going to have to reapprove that time, because the approval path has now changed. And so obviously what the approval path was before is now moot, and we need to reapprove that time because like I said, who these people are may now have changed. So that's something to be aware of. Then, as before, you'll have all your group manager types here on the side. So you'll be able to you know, go through each of these types, and you'll be able to say who's the group manager of those payroll groups. Then you'll be able to do your employees as well. Again, we've kind of streamlined these. You don't have, same thing with the group managers. You don't have to open a pick list, find the person in the pick list, hit add. Everything's in this real quick list where you can just go find who you're looking for and just hit the button to quickly add them or remove them. So it's, you know, it's real fast. And then again, if you want to do the search, you can do that. The search searches both lists. So you know, if you have a match and there are people who match in both lists, it's going to, you know, it's going to show everyone there who's in both lists. Then you can also filter. If you have a bad habit of not cleaning up your payroll groups, and you have old terminated employees who are still sitting around as members of your payroll groups, you can filter this on inactive employees, and it'll show terminated employees who are still in your payroll group. And you just go click, and just or just remove them all to kind of keep that cleaned up. Then you can go assign your pay type groups just as before. So nothing really new there, other than, again, it's in this nicer, quicker style where you can easily add and remove things. Assigning jobs and all the codes, this is basically like before, but here we have the equivalent of what you used to check the box at the top that says this person can access all jobs or all codes. It's the same thing here, but these buttons here. So let's say I don't want them to have access to everything. That's going to open up this view where now I can actually go on a one-by-one basis and add and remove things. Or if I want them to have access to all, I just do assign all, and then you can see it just says this group has access to all jobs. You don't have to come in, add, and remove. It's just if it's an active job, they have access to it. Same thing with all the code types. So you can either have them have access to all, or you can come in here and just say what specific cost codes you want them to have access to. And then, so again, same all the way down, nothing really new here. This is all the same functionality as what you're already accustomed to. Again, we have the previous to next button. So if you want to, if you have a new pay type group and you want to go through all your groups and assign it, you could do that from the pay type group setup page. But here you could go previous to next, and you can go cycle through all your payroll groups and set things up that way. So that might be a little faster as well. Wow. Okay, I'm really behind, so I do want to try and get to some QA questions as well. But I'm going to try and just real quickly browse through here because we only have a couple things left. So I'm just going to kind of quickly go through these. So here's the job setup. A couple things we have here. This is basically the same as if you do job-specific approval paths. So here you can come in here to the job. You can come in and you can say what your job-specific approval paths are. So who's the superintendent? All your job manager types will show up here. You say who's the superintendent, who's the project manager. You can come in here and add, remove them. Okay. So again, no new functionality there. Same thing with GL accounts. Property management companies who do GL account specific approval paths, they can come in here and do this. And I apologize, we're still wrapping up QA on all this. So we do have our full-time QA people working every day right now to do all the bugs, and we expect to have all the bugs fixed though by the end of next week. We are on track to start. Just so you know, we haven't indicated. We are on track to start rolling this out first week of August. So yeah, we're going to be wrapping up the last of our QA and bug fixing next week, and then this will start going out to beta companies. If you want to be a beta tester, if you want to get these new pages the first week of August, just let us know. Email support@hh2.com. Let us know you want to do the beta, and we'll get you set up with that. Pay type setup here. A couple of things that are kind of different here. We've made the sorting easier here. So we have this little button here to activate sort mode. You can come in here, and now you can just drag and drop. So that'll make things a lot easier to just come in here and order the default. This is the default order. So this is the order pay types will appear, not on the time card, because that's specific to the pay type group. But this will be the order pay types appear on the time approval page, in a labor detail report, on a PDF timesheet, where pay type groups are not in context. Okay, and so I'll go ahead and I'll just click on one of these pay types. Here's where you can specify, whether or not we total this. If it's a per diem, you may not include it in the grand totals, whether it's active, how many maximum digits it can be, whether or not you do quarter units, half units, whole units, or they can type whatever they want. The abbreviation, as well as the color. This is now the only place where color on pay types will be set. It will only be set right here. So you can come here and then you can see the color palette that we have. So setting colors, that'll be done right from there on the pay type setup. Again, actually, nope, that's it for that. Let's just, so we'll move on quickly here. Pay type group setup. Nothing really new functionally here, but here's where you'll see all your pay type groups. We will have the ability to activate and deactivate pay type groups, so that is something that's new. You can come in here, if you're creating a new pay type group and then you want to roll it out to all your payroll groups, you can just come in here and use this interface to just quickly add that to all the payroll groups. Here's where you add the pay types to a pay type group. Again, real easy to do this, but these are also orderable. So you know, if I come in here and I add again, yeah, sorry, we have a bug on this page, but you can see here I have a little drag and drop. So when I assign my pay type groups, I can say what order they should be on here by dragging and dropping them. This is what applies the ordering of the pay type on the timesheet, because here on the timesheet you have a pay type group in context, so that's the pay type in which those pay types will appear on the timesheet. And again, we do have the previous next button up here. If you want to cycle through your pay type groups in your administration, you can do that. Okay, almost at the end here. Manager types, so we've seen a lot of these. So for your payroll groups, your job specific approval paths, your GL account specific approval paths, here's where you can come in and say, these are the names of the manager types I have: report viewer, you know, group manager, foreman, enterprise manager, whatever those are, you can come in here. Job managers, project manager, superintendent, that's usually what those are. Account manager types, again, you may have a project and property manager, maybe, you know, what you want to call it. And so those are the labels you're going to see everywhere on all of your setup pages. You'll see those labels that you set up here on this page. Finally, just integration formats. We did cover this in the last webinar, but this is basically where you go to set up your export format. But another thing that's going to be coming here with this update, these integration formats are also going to be what is used in your labor detail report. So you will be able to come in here and specify a format. You could call it labor detail, and you could specify what columns and in what order you want to be on a labor detail report. And so when you generate your Excel file and your labor detail, your users will be able to go into their settings and say, whenever I generate a labor detail, use this integration format as the columns I want to have on that labor detail. The other thing that integration formats are going to be using is we are currently in development on allowing importing payroll time, such as if you have jobs who, for or whatever reason, you have a CSV file or a spreadsheet file of all your payroll time, and you just want to quickly import that all into hh2. We're actually going to have an import functionality where you can just upload a CSV file and specify the integration format with what the columns are and in what order, and it will just create payroll records off that CSV file. Okay, so that covers everything we were going to show today. The last thing I will just briefly indicate in the update that's going to it is not full functionality, that will be coming, but it's something that is in the Google Play Store right now. It is just the basic time entry and approval right now, but that is something that's available to you today. So those who have Android devices or tablets and want to start beta testing our Android app, that's available now. And so basically that covers my part of it. Dennis, do we have questions? I'm assuming then we have about, what do we have, about 6 minutes?
Yeah, we probably go a little bit over if we need to, just simply because of questions. So first of all, we had where's the job search located, and that's from the time card. They just want to see where it is. So
I see. So when I'm assuming when adding jobs to a timesheet, so that's part of the pick list. So when we go to add things to the timesheet, when you click on it, I'll just show quickly real again. When I click on any code type, see how my mouse is already taken into the search. So just with the one click, I can immediately type something in. So I'm already have focus in the search box, so I can type my search term right there. And so basically, yeah, that's where searching is available.
The other thing is, can you show it from the actual time card as well, where the search is there?
Oh, okay. So that's probably referring to here. So yeah, what I indicated was when the timesheet loads, it basically looks like this. But if all you have to do is scroll up. So if you're on a mouse, I'm on a trackpad here, but you just scroll up, and there's your search right there. So let's say again, let's say I wanted to search on the Plaquemines office part. I could just type in a search term there, and then that just searches on that job.
And then the next question is, can you use one email address for multiple employees? So like when you're setting up the employees, can you use the same email address on more than one employee? I believe is what they're asking.
It should be unique. For users, it does have to be unique. You will not be allowed to reuse an email address for user accounts. And again, that's because if I forgot my password and I need to reset it, there needs to be one and only one user account of which I have forgotten my password. And so you can only use one email address per user account as far as active users are concerned. Employees does not have a unique constraint. There may be some debate on whether it should, though. So I don't, as of right now, it is not required that it be unique, but that is subject to change. Let's just put it that way.
And then the next question is the payroll manager setting used for the PMs in order for them to approve time for their crew?
No, the is payroll manager on the user setup, so I'll take us back to where we were. And this is available both on the user setup in payroll as well as the user setup on the home page. When you go to permissions, is payroll manager means literally they are your payroll manager. They are the person who exports time and imports it. They are the final person of approval. They export the time from hh2 and import it into Timberline. That is the only thing that this checkbox should be used for. If they are a project manager, that is done down here. So that would be done down here, here's where you would say, this user is a project manager of these jobs. And you would go in here and specify what jobs they are a job manager of. So yeah, good question.
And then the next one is, let's see, sorry. Can you elaborate on what the field labels are again?
Okay, yeah, we had a couple of different field labels. So probably they're referring to the unit-specific one. So basically, we allow up to 5 fields that for every unit of time, you can specify additional information. You could almost think of these as the on the records in Timberline. And in fact, the unit record in Timberline, the time record, has 2 miscellaneous fields. You have miscellaneous 1 and miscellaneous 2 fields that you can just type in whatever you want in Timberline when you create a time entry in Timberline. And so these are basically ways of formalizing that, where you can actually expose that. And so if you have that turned on, you would go into your payroll group settings, and under settings, you would say, we have the unit 1, we have that enabled. And so then if I go back to the timesheet, I'm going to hope this works, because I think, again, this is just QA earlier this week. So when I pull this up, and voila, there we are. So custom 1, that was the label. I haven't really called it anything. I just typed custom 1 as the label, but you can see now we have a field there. So as before, let's say it's oil derricks, and I made my label be oil derricks, and I worked 2 hours on oil derrick, you know, that number oil derrick. I can come in here and save that. Now that is captured now. That unit of time can be exported, and you can come into the integration format. You can actually export that out of hh2 and import that into Timberline. If I come here in the integration format, you can see here's our unit, here's our custom fields. I could take, this was the one I just saved, unit custom 1. I could take that, I could come over here and I could put that into my export. Now that what I just typed is that oil derrick number is going to be in my export file, and I could import that into the miscellaneous 1 field of Timberline and capture that information or report on it or whatnot for reporting, you know, or whatever I may use that for. So yeah, good question. A lot of companies may not realize that we support those custom fields on the time. And so yeah, if you think that would be of value to you, contact us at support@hh2.com. Let us know you'd like to implement custom fields.
And then we got multiple questions asking if you could quickly show how to export time. Do you mind covering that real quick?
Yeah, those who do want to know about the exporting, again, we do have our previous webinars recorded. I know it's on our YouTube channel, so a real easy way, it's actually would probably be right there on your homepage. So yeah, it's not here anymore, but you can click on these and go to our YouTube channel and see those previous videos of where we kind of go over those in detail. But for doing exporting, after the payroll manager has approved all the time, they would come into the labor export page here. What you're going to do here is you'll see the pay period. This is always going to default to the previous pay period. And then, so within that, it's going to give you the summary of all the employees that are at the file, you know, their time has been approved by the payroll manager. It's gone all the way through the approval path. That time will show up here. I have buttons here by default. It's just going to include all employees in the export file, but I can, if I want to do a one-off, like let's say I terminated an employee and I need to cut his paycheck earlier, I can come in here, just find him, and I can just include him and do an export of him. Once you export an employee's time, that time will no longer be exportable. So in other words, if I terminated an employee early and I had to cut his check early and I exported his time, when I come in next week to export everyone else's time, that employee's time will not and cannot be in that export file anymore. So it's just kind of a catch for that. But by default, you know, barring those special situations, you'll come in here, everything will be just as you need it. You don't need to change anything. You can just hit export transactions and it will go ahead and export it. It's very fast. It should only take a couple of seconds for your entire company. So this is very, very fast. It'll give you your export file just as you're accustomed to. Now, it'll also say here, if you made a mistake or you forgot where the file saved and you already closed the browser window, or you, like I said, you made a mistake, you need to make changes again. You have to hit this history button, and that's what it says right here. Because again, I'll just show you. If I refresh this page, I've exported those 2 employees now. They are not going to show up anymore because I've exported them. So you can see there's no employees with time available to export. If you want to access that time or you want to re-download that file, hit this history button up here. This will now show you the historical list of all of the exports that have been done in the system by you or anyone. It's not limited, as you see. This is going to show everyone. And it will say, this time was exported by Donald Black and the date and time that the export was done versus, you know, hh2 admin, Lori Becker. So this will show you all the exports. It'll show you the date range that was in that export, how many employees were in that export, and what the pay type totals were at that export. If I just need the file again, if I don't know where my browser saved the file to and I need to get the file again, I can just hit this get file button and it'll let me download the file again. If I made a mistake and I need to undo that export and make changes, hit this rollback. It'll give you a confirm, it'll roll it back, and then as you can see here, Now the employees that I just exported are back. Now if I want to make changes, I can go back to the time approval page or the timesheet page, reclaim that time, make whatever changes I want, reapprove, come back here, re-export, just like you're accustomed to. We do have some settings here. This is where you specify your integration format. So the integration format, if you only have one integration format, you don't need to deal with this. It's just selected by default. If you set up multiple integration formats, some companies, for some reason, they need to export time in 2 different CSV formats because they import with 2 different views in Timberline, usually based on employee pay group. You can change it here. Consolidate rolls up all dates for that employee. If for some reason they don't like to have lots of time entries showing, it will just have one time entry for that pay period, for that coding and job and pay type. It'll just sum up all the days of the week into one transaction. The other filters that are available, if you want to filter on pay group, if you export pay groups separately, click on the date range here and it will give you your filters. If I want to change my date range, if I want to just export, hourly versus salary pay groups, or however your pay groups are, you can specify them here. If you want just time coded to certified classes, some companies do that. You can do that, or just payroll groups. Pay groups are what's the pay group field on the employee record in Timberline. Payroll groups is the hh2 user group that the time was coded under. So you can filter by all those things, apply your filters, and it will just then do time that matches those filters. And then you can export just those things. So we're kind of over time. Was that all the questions, or did we have more?
We have a few more, but for those that we didn't answer, what we can do is we will contact you back and get you some either screenshots to show you, or just we'll figure out some way to answer them if they require showing the new system. And so
we have a lot of questions.
We have a few that have gone through. If you have a minute, we could probably go through 1 or 2 more if you got.
Yeah, we can definitely try to just work through them. But basically, that's for everyone else, that's it. We're basically just gonna finish answering questions here.
Okay, so we have if someone is approver of time, how is that set up? So they basically want to. It looks like they want to know how you set up an approver.
Well, that's a little too generic to answer. That's going to be based on
who payroll groups
and how are they approving. Let's say it's a payroll group manager. So again, in all of your payroll group setup, you're going to have an approval path. That's going to show, and every payroll group has an approval path, so this is nothing new. So you're going to, for each payroll group, you specify who are the people in your company who need to approve that time. So for this specific example, this is not a realistic example. Usually companies only have a couple of levels. But here we have level 1 is employee. That means your employees have their own usernames and passwords. They log into hh2 either on the apps or on the website, and they key in their own time. So that's what the employee path is. And these can be whatever you want. These are all of this is configurable to your heart's content. But for this specific example, employees log in, enter in their own time at level 1. They approve that, okay? Who this is basically just what it says. If you're an employee in the payroll group, then that means that's you. So you would just, add all these employees in this example. They all log into hh2 and enter in their time, and then they approve it at level 1. So that defines who they are, who the approver is at level 1. Now let's move on to level 2. Let's just ignore this one here. Let's just move on to level 2. And in fact, let me just hide that, just so we're less confusing. So then level 2, group manager. So whoever the manager is over all these people. Now this isn't a job-specific manager. This is just some guy who is, you know, let's say this is office staff. Let's say, for example, this payroll group is office staff. So all your office workers log into hh2, enter their employees. Then you have an office manager who approves all their time. So that would mean you would have a manager type called office manager. You don't have to. You could just have one just called group manager. You don't have to, you know, specify that this is specifically an office manager. But your group manager, that'll show up here. So who your group managers are, you know, that's specified here. So we have for this type, this is a group manager type, and it's of type foreman. But these are all used, again, these are whatever you want to call these. These are effectively just labels. So we may create a manager type called office manager. Well, so that's what we would select there. And so that would tell us that the office manager is the person who's this payroll group. But whatever you have specified for that level, you can see here we have foreman. So because we've specified foreman approved time in this group, we have a menu item called foreman, and so that is where so I click here. Here's my foreman. So these are users. So these are hh2 users that I'm looking at here. So these are all the hh2 users in the system, and these are the 4 users that I said they are the foreman of Becker's crew. So, you know, here's Becker, here's Lori Becker. She is the foreman of her crew. So she's in here. And these others, you know, whoever, maybe they help out, you know, maybe you maybe have multiple foremen, or they just help out or whatnot. So this is where you specify your group managers, or, you know, if that's what they mean by approvers. But then your approvers may also, you know, there's more than that. You can say after the group manager, we have job managers. So let's say the group has coded to 3 different jobs, and there's a different project manager on each of those jobs. So we may say level 3 is project manager, okay? So and then we would, you know, we would come in here. We'd probably, now we've added a level. So now we have 4 levels of approval. So it's going to be employees enter in their own time. Group manager approves all their time. But if those employees coded to a specific job, the project manager of each of those jobs that they coded to gets to approve the time for their job. So here, you know, we've specified it's a project manager. So this is going to be whoever you've gone into and specified as the project manager of that job, they get to approve any time that the employee coded to their job. And then it will go to payroll manager finally. So that's kind of a brief overview of the approval path, but you know, like I said, this really is configurable to your heart's content. There's an infinite number of ways to configure the approval path based on how your company wants to do it. Generally, we know from lots of experience that smaller is better. The fewer number of approval paths you have here, the easier it's going to be for your company to get their job done and get payroll processed every week. And again, you can contact us at support if you know you want to talk about how you have your approval path set up, and if we have any recommendations of perhaps ways to improve that.
Okay, the very last one that I think multiple people asked, and I put it in, I answered it a lot just through the questions here in the GoToWebinar. But basically they're saying, when this rolls out, though, is it going to change anything behind the scenes? Do they have to re-implement?
Well, yes, no. They don't have to do anything. You don't have to do anything more than email out the video record. You know, when this video recording is, when the webinar's done, we will email everyone a link with the YouTube video. You can just send out a company-wide email to that webinar video and say, the look is changing. Go watch this video when you have time so that you're not caught off guard. This doesn't change anything about your data. All the back end is the same. The back end is unchanged. This is nothing more than a change in the front end. There is new functionality, so there's new back-end functionality, and we indicated what that, new features and things like that I mean. So yeah, there's new features, but as far as you don't have to set up anything. Obviously, at some point, though, you're going to have a new employee or a new project manager, and you'll need to come in here and do these. But when we start rolling this out the first week of August, you don't need to do a darn thing. There's nothing that's required of you other than to be aware of the change that's coming, and to just be aware of the different ways to go about doing things. But your configuration is the same. We don't need to port it. It's the same as it's always been. Your historical payroll time is the same. That's all unchanged. You'll still have access to all the time you've always had access to. There's nothing different with that.
Okay. Well, that pretty much covers it, Kevin.
Okay, good. Well, that's good. We only went 16 minutes over.
Yeah.
Just to wrap up, I guess I already indicated we have been recording this, so we will be emailing all those who attended. We'll email them the link to the YouTube video when we get it posted. If you do have any additional questions, or if you just want to schedule time with Jason Morrison, our implementer, to just kind of get a one-on-one, hands-on overview of these changes specifically for your company, just let us know. We can get you on the calendar. These pages are actually all there, available on all of your websites right now. They're just hidden, but they are there. As we've kind of seen and indicated, we're in the final stages of QA, so we don't want to be anyone going to them. But we do have the capability at any time to actually pull up these new pages on your existing website to actually show you what it looks like on your site with your data. Those of you who have been who experienced performance issues, if you have guys on cellular connections who are trying to access this stuff, but they don't have tablets to use, or their Android tablets, and they don't yet have the Android app. Anyone who's experienced performance issues, you will see a drastic change with these pages. And if you want to see those changes right now, let us know. We can show you what the difference will be on your own site. So yeah, just contact us at support at hh2 and let us know. The other thing I'll show, a lot of people don't seem to be aware of how to contact us, especially if you want to call us on the phone. It is true we no longer have an inbound phone line, but you can call us. It's this help button down right here. If you come down here to fill out a new form, if you want to talk to us on the phone, all you do is change this drop down right here to via my cell number or via my phone number. And then whatever you've typed up here, as soon as you click this button, our phone system dials your phone immediately and simultaneously dials Tina, our support person, and connects you. So while we don't have a direct inbound line, you can still immediately talk to us on the phone. Just click the help button in the corner and fill out the form here, and just change the contact me to via my phone number or via my cell number based on what you want us to call you, and hit the button. So if you want to contact us for any reason about any of the things you saw here today, you can just go ahead and use that form and let us know, or you can always just email support@hh2.com as well.